Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the podcast today, we have Rick Heyland. Rick, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Thomas. Grateful to be here.
It's my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I'm 60 years old. I just retired from a 32-year-old consulting, 32 years in management consulting, productivity improvement. And 2 years ago, I started a continuous improvement for life business, which is basically personal coaching and productivity coaching for individuals and small business owners. And I wrote a book and I've done some teachable courses. I'm just having a blast in so-called retirement. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, originally from Alberta, Canada. And so I've traveled in a few points around the world in my management consulting career, but happy now to be in the continuous improvement for life business.
This immediately makes me think of a conversation I had with someone who he talked about the stages of life. And he talked about the fact that when you reach a certain age, like it's normal for our society to kind of say, you know, you're done now, you're retired. But his approach was that when you reach that stage in your life, you become a mentor. Like you've got all this information that you've gathered, you've got all this knowledge, and now it's sort of rewarding, and it's the best thing to do to mentor people who are also, you know, in the middle of all that.
Yeah, Thomas, you nailed you never retire really. You go on to different interests or phase 2 or phase 3. And this phase really is about contribution. And all that consumes my mind these days is how do I get these skills, tools, and habits and procedures that I've developed out to thousands. And it really is, you know, if you wanted to stay in money-making mode, you'd stay in your career. But if you want to go to contribution, you know, as a consulting and running a consulting company of about 200 people, you impact 30 to 50 organizations at a time, and, you know, the subsequent leaders inside of that. But, you know, when you do what we're doing now and writing books and doing training courses for the masses online, you got the opportunity to contribute to hundreds and thousands and more. So it is about contribution. It is about how can I share these things that I've learned to the masses. And one of the most interested audiences that I do find in my material is kind of that, well, there's two groups. There's one, the 25 to 35 that are just getting their career going, that really want to do it right and intentional and a balanced approach, a sustainable approach. And then of course, there's the group of kind of 45 to 55 that say, you know, I've made some money. How do I do this right? I'm looking for meaning now, not just the dollar. So, or you know, earning an income. So those are the two groups that kind of I get a chance to speak to these days.
Well, it's interesting to know that you've written a couple of books. What other books did you write?
So the book that I wrote last October was called Live Your Purpose. It's a step-by-step guide to living your best life. And it's really kind of my experience with purpose and goals and how to handle setbacks in life. As a 26-year-old, I was doing an MBA program. I had just moved I'll tell you the short version of the story, but basically it was a really life-defining moment. I moved my family across the country in Canada to go to a big, expensive MBA school, and I was 26 years old. I had 2 kids, my wife and I, and I just worked my tail off. And about mid-October in the first semester, I got in economics class C-, and I think it was one of the lowest grades in the class. And it was one of those crisis moments where you say, did I make a huge mistake? I moved my family away from our loved ones into this. And I remember people like Dr. Stephen R. Covey and others saying, well, you should have a mission statement in life. And so during that little mini crisis of confidence, that weekend in my unfinished basement in London, Ontario, Canada, I worked on the draft of my purpose statement. And I had read a few articles from a few people to try to pull that together. And, you know, no lightning flashes or no big revelations. I felt good about it. But then a year and a half later, when I went to go look for jobs, and I did improve slightly in my grades, by the way, and went to look for jobs, I found across a company. There was nothing of interest. I got rejected by a few. I didn't apply to very many. I was looking for something that spoke to me. And I found a consulting company called RLG International that said basically all the same words that were in my purpose statement. We are about continuous improvement. We're about, not just telling people what to do, but telling them how and helping them, advising them, coaching them, developing, mentoring, to use your word. And it just spoke to me. And long story short, I applied for the job. The next day they posted 10 interviews. I wasn't on the interviews. I called them up and said, basically, this is how they say it. I said, you've made a mistake. Oh, why is that? Well, I applied for this job and it really spoke to me. And I didn't say anything about my purpose statement at the time, but it really spoke to me. And I'd love to you to reconsider. And so the gentleman said, sure. Oh, okay. Put your name on the list. You'll be interview number 11. And sure enough, the day came. They came to the campus. We interviewed. I was the last one at 5 o'clock. And, kind of the bottom line, I was the only one that got offered a job and had a fantastic 32-year career and became an owner in the company and second largest shareholder. And anyhow, I could go on and on about purpose, but that's really the first part of that book, is to help people understand why it's so important and what the research is saying. I was fascinated doing research for the book and seeing all the, like I've just given a career example, but all the health benefits to living with purpose. All the studies show. And then in chapter 4, Thomas, I go into detail about how to develop it, because I couldn't find in any of the literature a real clear step-by-step process. So based on my own experience in helping clients through the years, I developed the 777 process, 7 questions over 7 days, 7 hours, and you've got your draft purpose statement. So anyhow, I could go on forever about the benefits of purpose, but that's really the first part of the book. And then second part really says, okay, if you're living by purpose, how can you connect your goals? Because there's a lot of literature out there that companies and individuals don't hit their goals. I mean, the personal goal side, you can see research that says 20% of goals are accomplished. And so how do we really, if you look critically at that and say, well, how do we do a better job at getting to 80% of our goals accomplished? One of the techniques, one of the ways is to make sure it's connected to purpose. Because if it's connected to purpose, you're not going to get as discouraged. You're not going to get thrown off the scent when the first, negative or bad thing happens or setback happens. So that's kind of the first lesson to make yourself one of the 80% goal achievement people. There's lots of other tools and techniques. The third part of the book is about, okay, well, realistically, we don't hit our goals all the time. Even if, some authors say, well, you just got to double down. Well, that's great. But what happens if you get discouraged? What happens if real life happens? What happens? So some of the tools and techniques we talk about in the latter half of the book is, first of all, the skill of gratitude and the importance of developing gratitude in your life. And having that as a central habit every morning, so your brain can focus on what you have, not versus what you don't have. That's a powerful motivator to get you keeping to work on your goals. One of the other skills and habits we talk about there is the idea of mindfulness, meditation, so you can slow yourself down. Most of the executives and people I coach today, and probably similar for you, is people are going so fast and so busy. How do you really slow down and connect? And make sure you're doing the things that are connected to purpose, that are very strategic. There's a whole bunch of good choices out there to spend our time. What's the really most important thing to do right now? And, in there we talk about the importance of weekly planning and daily planning to connect to your strategic goals and your purpose. And then, the last habit we talk about is the idea of acceptance. And so this is where I'm at, not to be in denial, take full self-responsibility for where I'm at. Don't blame parents, your boss, whoever it is, and really accept where you're at. That's the most powerful place to action plan from. Whether you're an entrepreneur or an individual just trying to get ahead in their career or their life, the concept of acceptance is very powerful to be able to move from and really to drive the next step that's strategic and important in your life. So anyhow, that gives you a bit of an overview and some of the skills and habits and ideas that we share in the book.
It's a great overview. Thank you very much. There's a couple of questions that come from that, and we can work backwards. You talked about acceptance. How do you differentiate between, let's say, accepting where you are and what's possible for you? So acceptance, if you were a pessimist, let's say, you might accept that things are perhaps worse than they actually are. Whereas if you are too much of an optimist, you might try and glamorize something to, I don't know, kid yourself that things are better than they are. How do you differentiate those two?
Yeah, and this is interesting. In my own marriage, I have both sides. My wife is tremendously naturally optimistic, and I'm more of a critical thinker and see the gaps and the holes. So I've lived that now for 38 years and have experience with firsthand seeing both. And of course, in business, you see both. But I would say to those that are naturally more critical thinking, the skill of gratitude is your best friend. That if you're a critical thinker, always see the holes and the gaps, good for you. That's a strength. But the counter side of that is also a shadow. So how you build your shadow side of that strength is to make a deliberate, like I do every day in my continuous improvement journal, I start on one page about what are the gratitudes and learnings from yesterday. And that's another key too, right? Because everything's not just rosy. So what am I grateful for? Everything from the weather to your house to something positive that happened in business or in your life or relationships yesterday. But also the key word in there is learning. So what did I learn from any of the setbacks? Nelson Mandela, one of my heroes, the president of South Africa, was in prison for 29 years in Robben Island. I lived in South Africa for 2 years, so that's one of the reasons I'm passionate about his story. But he said something very profound, and this is the man that was incarcerated for 29 years. He says, I never lose, I either win or learn. And I think there has some nuggets of truth for you in your question. You're either winning and you're grateful and you focus on what you have, or you're learning. If you're not winning, and you have to be realistic, if I'm not winning, how do I get in that mindset of accepting where I'm at, not blaming? Because if you're still blaming your boss or your spouse or your parents or somebody else in your life, you're not at a position, whether you're a critical thinker or a Pollyanna thinker, you're not in a position to move on and change. And so I love that approach by Nelson Mandela, that I'm either winning or learning. I'm either grateful or I'm in learning mode. And in learning mode, I have to first accept my situation. And that doesn't mean accept if you're in a very bad abusive situation, that doesn't mean accept that. That means, get out of there. And now how can I continue to grow and learn as an individual or as a business professional? But so please don't hear in that word acceptance, that's about, I'm in a very abusive situation, I need to stay. Not at all. That means, wherever I'm at, when I'm in a safe position, now how can I learn? How can I not be a victim of my past and now learn, get in a position of gratitude and learning? And so I think if we can get our mindset set on both of those paradigms at the same time, whether you're an optimist or a deeply critical thinker, it'll balance you off and get you in a position. Because my passion, Thomas, is happiness and productivity, happiness and success. I know lots of successful people at 59 and 3/4 years old, lots of successful people that aren't happy. And they are very productive. They've got lots of money and they're not happy. So my passion in my business, and I always end my blogs or podcasts or writings or my website with the idea of live a life of sustainable continuous improvement. So that I'm not looking for, 4 years and you can make lots of money and then it's happily ever after. I mean, how do we build those happiness and productive, successful practices and habits in our lives so that we can enjoy 80 years of happiness, high productivity, and success? That's my real vision and goal at this end. I might not have been able to say that at 26 when I first developed purpose, but certainly now I can see that. And that's my message to people is that, don't wake up one day and you've made lots of money and you're unhappy and you don't have the relationships and love in your life that you need. So when I talk about goal setting, I'm talking about how can we do it for financial, spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, all those areas, and be successful in each one of those areas. And therefore we can, find both success and happiness.
Your answer made me think of a Tony Robbins quote, when you spoke about acceptance, and I thought your explanation made me think of see things as they are, but not worse than they are.
Yeah.
Leads
Good.
me to my next question, because you spoke about gratitude prior to that. And he's a big advocate of gratitude. I'm not sure if you're aware of Tony's work or not, but
A little bit. Yes, I am.
and I always struggled with, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I always struggled with the concept of, he would refer to it as changing your state relative to thinking about gratitude. So I think you added some pretty good things anyway regarding your, call it your journal. And
Yeah.
also you either learn or you're winning. Was that? You
Yeah.
either win or you learn.
Right.
But if you struggle with the concept of implementing gratitude into your life, what would you say to someone who struggles with that?
Yeah, I think you're also in the first part of that question, you got a really important point, and I can't speak for whether, Tony or Jack Canfield and some of these guys that really dream big, and then all your intentionality will get behind it no matter what, you'll accomplish your goals. So I think there is some, I don't want to see somebody work extremely hard, extremely intentional, be unhappy, and 20 years later, what's that worth? So how do we build these sustainable habits in our life so that we're actually enjoying the journey now while we're still striving? I love the Eastern world's kind of practices here. The Western world idealism is the Tony Robbins, the Jack Canfields that, set an intention and, your whole world will align around that. And I believe that. But at the same time, there is some powerful thought in being present and developing an attitude of gratitude every day. For example, I start my day, and I only learned this the last 10, 15 minutes of my life. I start my day with 10 minutes of meditation through the app called Calm to get my mind very quiet and centered, appreciative of what I have, rather than always racing ahead. It is not fun to be only focused on the future. I've seen lots of unhappy people. And so one of those tools and techniques is acceptance, mindfulness, meditation, and gratitude. So that's why I developed this. It's actually coming out in mid-March on my website, but it's a continuous improvement journal. And if you open up the first page, it's got, what's your purpose statement? So that's connected to what we already talked about. And the second page is what are your goals? And then the third page is what's your action plans for your goals? Because it's great to have intention, but then you need to think deeply during your quiet moments of the morning or night when you can get really quiet about what are the most strategic things for me to do to accomplish my purpose and goals. And then every page after that, on the left-hand side is gratitude and learnings. So I still do this to this day. Every day I start with what I'm grateful for. And it could be anything physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, relationship-wise, small things, big things. And then the other half of the page is, okay, now that I'm in that mindset of gratitude and acceptance, what do I do to plan and prioritize my day? And boy, I can tell you that people that have those two habits in their life are both striving and progressing and accomplishing and trying to stay present and enjoy every moment. And it's a difficult balance to find both, right? You'll see lots of authors that are great at strive, strive, strive. There's an incredible something out there for you. And then you see lots of the mindfulness meditation group saying, staying present. So what if you could do both? And that's kind of the balance I'm trying to draw in the book on It's Your Purpose is I think the joy is doing both.
Well, that it comes back to what your two books are on. So one's your life's purpose and the other one is crushing your goals. Is that right?
Yeah, so the second one isn't a book just yet. It's actually a training course on Teachable, but you can find it on my website and it's at a super discounted price. But basically it's 7 steps to improve profitability in your business by 20%. And I've really targeted this one. Most of my 30 out of the 35 years in management consulting spent in big and medium-sized companies. And so now lately I've been focusing on, well, the first couple of years of my career and then the last couple have been on small business. So this training course that I developed called Crush Your Goals for Small Business is those 7 steps to improve your business and profitability by 20%. And that's on Teachable. It's on for $59. It's 10 very professional videos. I'll just give you a flavor of the first couple of steps. Step one, for example, with your, and by the way, the target market is kind of under 50 employees, kind of 1 to 50. So, I just took a group through, several $1 million business with 9 employees, and we did work through each one of these 7 steps. And step one is, let's do a quick SWOT analysis of your business. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities and threats? And the first half is internal looking. The second half is external looking. And I can tell you, if you want to reset a business, and I would encourage people to do this quarterly or at least yearly, is to do a quick SWOT with your key employees. Even if you're only 4 people in a growing startup, do a quick SWOT, and you will be so pleasantly surprised on getting your group aligned on what are the things around strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Do it
and
with
then the second
exercise with the team, are you saying?
Yeah, I mean, you could do it as a single entrepreneur. There's power to writing that down, absolutely. But I just did it with a group of 9. They worked through the videos, and then I offer a free coaching call at the end. So at the free coaching call, I worked through and heard their 9 steps, and it was brilliant. And one of the steps they enjoyed the most was the second one about purpose at work. So the last chapter in that first book I talked about, Live Your Purpose. I couldn't help it because I've spent so much with helping others with their own businesses, is, what's the power at purpose at work, and getting them to develop their purpose statement and draft it out, and they later worked it on, finalized it. But to realize that there's way more power than just saying to making money, which is obviously an end in mind, obviously, to anybody that, owns or is a shareholder in a business. But what's the real purpose behind who you're serving and what you're serving and your real contribution? It's easy when you're Apple to say, we're going to be a disruptor. We're going to change business segments in a massive disruptive way. Remember the early one was to get a computer in every home. That was unbelievable. That was unthinkable. So what happens if you're a commodity business or a startup? Or it's still very powerful to have purpose at work. And LinkedIn just did a study, and I quote that in the book as well, is that they showed that this global study that for those companies that had purpose, 60% of them, their revenue grew. And for those that didn't, 42% of them, their revenue decreased. So growing versus decreasing with purpose. So it's so important at work to have purpose so that your employees can see that this is bigger than a paycheck, so that your customers can see, and you can actually, research literature has shown you can charge more if you're really excelling at your purpose and you're bringing more than just a commoditized or a service. What is your real purpose behind what you're doing? So that is critical, and often that's the second or third video that we take people through in these 10 videos. So anyhow, that gives you a sample for some of the things folks can work on to bring increased retention from employees and increased growth and profitability for their business.
Do you have your example or a copy of when you made yours when you were, did you say 26?
Yeah.
Do you remember what it is?
Yeah, I do. And I put it at the beginning of the book, and then my revised one, I'm not a big believer that you revise it regularly, but I went through this, and you'll kind of see as I kind of cite the two. So in 1986, 7, I wrote that purpose as a 26, 27-year-old. And it says, I strive in my life to have continuous improvement for myself, my family, and others in my circle of influence. And the second line says, I want to interdependently focus on continuous improvement in my vocation, avocation, and ecclesiastical service efforts. So I wanted this interdependent benefit to not just for my work, but for my vocations and some of the things I do in service. So, and then the third line that I added in 2006 said, I'm striving for this continuous improvement with love and compassion for myself and others. And so the maturity that I realized as an older 40-something-year-old is that, I didn't want to be one of those successful, making lots of money and unhappy people with relationships falling by the wayside. Clayton Christensen writes in one of his books that I loved, How Do You Measure Your Life, which he basically talks about the importance of mission statements or purpose statements. He watched people, Harvard MBAs, come back. He was a professor at Harvard MBA. He just passed away a year or two ago from cancer. But he wrote this book because he saw so many of these Harvard MBAs come back with lots of money and lots of career status and titles, and estranged and second and third partners and spouses, and estranged from their kids. And I'm sure not everybody, I'm not trying to suggest that, but that's the story in his book. And so he encouraged people to live by purpose. So when I went through all that reading and some other things around mindfulness and acceptance and staying present, I added that third line for self-compassion and acceptance. And I didn't want to be the guy that just, continuous improvement or damned, or, it's that I want my kids and grandkids to know that, it's also about love and acceptance as you move through that striving to achieve wonderful things in your life. So does that make sense, Thomas? Is that what you're after?
Exactly, yeah. I'm just interested to know whether you feel that so far you've met your goal or met your purpose.
Well, it's interesting. The first parts I definitely did. And then the third sentence that I added around self-love and acceptance and for others, I just, and my oldest son, Brett, didn't know I added that third line. And he's often married, and he's got 4 wonderful kids of his own with him and Heather. And he came back to me one day and a couple of years ago and said, Dad, you're still striving and hard driving and doing all these things in your life, but there's a real, how did he word it? A real more patient, loving approach. And I got, oh my crap, that is so awesome. That is like validation that I'm in the right path, because that is exactly how I want it. And it's a journey, right, Thomas? We still make mistakes, right? We still get impatient. We have a plan and it doesn't work. And sometimes we get impatient with ourselves and others, but it was at least a small little validation that I'm on the right path in that journey of who I want to become.
Well, it's in a way a small thing to do, write another sentence, but the outcome that you got from that was presumably massive in terms of your life. So it sounds like a great thing to do. What would you advise, or how would you encourage someone to do that if they were sold on the concept? What would you say to them?
Yeah, it's I find there's 2 hangups or fear points or procrastination points. One is people can hear this or read this and see, okay, I get it. It sounds good for companies, for people, but I don't know where to start. And the perfectionist side really has, I've learned, a hang up on just getting going. So often I'll have a coaching call just to help them get started, even though in chapter 4, I've got the 7 questions you need to start with. For example, question number 1 is, how do I want to be remembered at my funeral? You can't control what people say, but you can live intentional now. That when I pass away at 85, and if I'm able to listen to my funeral, what do I want my kids or my spouse to be saying? How did grandpa or dad or partner live? And if you kind of live with that kind of intentionality rather than in the moment, you will respond much more proactively. But getting started, I've really noticed some people have a hard time with that. I want to get it perfect. And for those people, I would say, just start drafting. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just noodle a couple of bullet points about the first 3 questions and you're off. And yes, it won't be perfect. Don't worry about that. So that's one group that I've helped coach through and realize, and would say to your listeners. The other group is that they have no problem starting. They're having more trouble finishing. And so they just need a little confidence boost, that once they're done the 7 questions, and the 7th question is to put together a draft, kind of 50 words or less, 60 words or less, statement, a summary, thoughts from all the first six questions that you kind of put together. And I often have another short coaching call with people to breathe, to give them validation, but they could also do it to a trusted partner, Don't, you want that balance of somebody that you trust, but will also give you some honest feedback, that knows you well enough, but will still give you some honest feedback and encouragement. Not to say, well, what are you doing this stupid stuff for? But that knows you well enough to say, you know what, that, Thomas, that really is your strengths. And I love the way you summarized that. And you're missing one in that final statement. So sometimes it's really helpful to have kind of somebody outside of your own head to, in fact, in step 6, I recommend to people to go to a trusted partner, a trusted advisor. And I define that in the book, what that looks like in chapter 4. But it's so important to get outside of your own head to get some feedback on it. For me at 26, it was my spouse, and I ran it by her and she said, have you thought about this? And then when by the time that job came around, it was super validating. And by the way, that was a year and a half later that I really found the value in it, right? I didn't see it right away. It did give me a little bit of confidence that, okay, I can be good at some things here. I just have to find it. But yeah, so if you're a perfectionist and really having a hard time getting started, just brainstorm, just write down a few bullets on question 1 or 2 and you'll be off to the races. And if you're really having a hard time putting it together, then at the end, have the confidence to share your draft notes with a trusted advisor and get a little bit of feedback, and that can help you codify it and bring it together. And because often you're deep into it. And by the way, some authors say it could take years to do it. I say this balance between urgency and clarity is super important. So that's why I give the 7 questions, an hour each day in 7 days. So there's some urgency and there's also some reflective time. And will you have it 100% after 7 days? No, but you've got something that you can continue to tweak at least after you give it more pondering and reflection. So it could be, you could do this in a week. And I've had people tell me that it actually takes less than the first couple of days is heavy loaded. So they take an hour, but the last few days don't even take an hour. So it doesn't really even take 7 hours, but in a week, you can have this powerful thing called a purpose that then you could align your interests, capabilities, strengths, and passions towards. And by the way, I don't think I've mentioned it just, Thomas, but I also, in writing this book, commissioned a 1,400 person survey. They were from 4 countries, the UK, Australia, Canada, and the US. And I asked the question, who lives with purpose? And I found that I also asked a separate question, who's the happiest? And I had a 5-point scale. And so I only looked at the people that had said they were the very happiest and correlated that with purpose. And the people that were the very happiest in purpose, those people were 32% happier that said they had purpose. And by the way, there are 3 top habits of the happiest, and I'm going to argue the most productive, but of the happiest people were 1, regular exercise, 2, daily planning. I didn't ask, do they do it exactly like I do it or like you do it? I just said daily planning. And then the 3rd is they do regular service for others. So they give random acts of kindness, whatever that might be. So those were the 3 habits of the happiest people. I love that. Regular exercise, and most of them were just walking. I love running and biking and other things, but most of it was just walking. So that's, anybody can do that. And then planning and exercise. And I just love that. So if any of the listeners are looking to improve their own happiness and productivity, those are 3 simple things to start with.
That's a great answer. I wanted to, because there's so much to talk about, especially since you said that you love exercise, you love running, and is it right? You've done 14 marathons.
Yeah, that's right.
How was that?
So, I've always loved exercise for whatever reason. I was a rec basketball player. I played high school, but a rec basketball player, and played in undergrad and MBA school and the rec teams, and just had a blast. And then about 34 years old, I realized, it's so hard to get a pickup game going these days. And my skills are starting to diminish. And so it became a little less fun. And it's hard to get everybody together. So a buddy said, well, why don't you try running? And I said, I've never ran. And so I said one morning, he said, well, let's go do a marathon together. I said, I don't even know if I can run. So that first day I ran a mile and I was gassed. And then I looked up on the internet how to train to run at the time it was a 4-hour marathon I was trying to do, and that my buddy had done. And so I just found, again, this is the finding the how, and saw a program and a how detailed there. And I just followed the script, ran the first one, said, geez, what if I could do a 3-hour and 30-minute marathon? I Googled that and figured out, oh, this is what I got to do differently. This is how I got to train differently. I need to do more speed work. I need to do better long work. And then I said, well, what if I could get to the Boston Marathon? That's kind of a prestigious. You have to get a certain time at a certain age. So I think I was in my early 40s. And so I had to get like a 3-hour and 20-minute marathon. And so in St. George, Utah, I applied, got in, and trained to get a 3-hour and 15. And Thomas, it was the most miraculous thing. I did a 3-hour and 20 and 22-second marathon to qualify for the 2003 Boston Marathon. So you as long as it didn't say 3:21, so I was within seconds of not qualifying. But the point is, I did it. And Boston wasn't quite as great. It was a warm, they started at 11 Eastern for TV. They were televising it back then on ESPN2 or something. And so it started in the middle of the day, and it was a real kind of spring warm day. And so anyhow, I didn't do quite as well as my qualifying time, but it was a thrill just to qualify for it and to accomplish a goal and learn how to do it, because I really didn't know how. And so hopefully, even if you're not interested in running a marathon or even a half marathon, it's one of those things that, if you get the right coaching and the right insight into how, you can accomplish anything. And I'm convinced of that. Jeff Colvin wrote a great book that highlighted the importance of, it was something to the effect of, it's not about intellect, it's about, I'll remember the title here in a second, but the main point was, it's about having deliberate practice in your life. That's how you develop skills and become exceptional. So, even Warren Buffett had his dad as a mentor and, watched him in the stock brokerage. Even Tiger Woods had a coach, his dad in the very, as year 1 and 2 and 3. And then any golf professional has a coach, because you can't always see what you need. So the idea of any skill that I'm trying to develop, whether it be my net worth, whether it be my golf game, whether it be my running, whatever it might be, if you get deliberate practice, and what deliberate practice means is I can go out and practice golf forever and not get any better. You think, oh man, I'm practicing, and then I get out and it's the same, mid 80s or 90s score. But once I can know the right things to practice, and then I add practice, you've got gold. You've got something you can build on. And that's whether you're going to be a financial investor, whether you're going to work on your golf game, or you're going to run a marathon. So the right kind of practice is what we need. And that's where coaching and expertise, and why blogs are so popular, why books are so popular, why training courses are so popular, and coaching and mentoring is so popular, is that once I get the right ideas in my head, I can do it. I just need the right ideas. If I have bad practice ideals in my head, I'm never going to invest well. So anyhow, that's the power of deliberate practice in our lives. And you can run a marathon or do anything else you want in life.
My follow-up question was going to be, is there any principle that you learned from running a marathon that you then carried over into life or into business, but you went with it anyway?
Yeah, no, that is one that I just highlighted. But I tell you, another one is the power of leading indicators. And that's both in my book and in my business course. It's great to say, oh, I'm going to improve my business 20%, or I want to run a 3-hour and 20-minute marathon. That's great. Intentional, line up the world. Tom Peters and Jack Canfield will say, great, awesome. But the real magic is the power of the leading indicator. So in the marathon case, it was, okay, I have to learn to run to get to 3:20. And I'll make up the number here for a second, but I have to run my speed work, my interval work, my half mile to mile interval work at 7-minute miles, or I actually think it was 6:41, which was really hard for me. Imagine at the beginning, could never have done that. But as you do it in half-mile increments on the treadmill or on the track, and you just run your brains out for that at that pace, you're building capacity and capability for speed work. And then the next time you're trying to do 2. And so the leading indicator, a really great one, this is just one example of it, in marathon running, was your speed work, and then getting it to that level. In fact, when you Google research it, you'll see what you have to do on your speed work. And I couldn't do it at the beginning, but sure enough, as you work on it and you do, and it says, okay, well, after you do your first half mile at a 6:41 pace, the next time with a 2-minute break, do 2 of them. And then by the end, you're doing 6 of them. And all of a sudden you're building capacity for speed. And then another one is your long, and you're never supposed to increase more than 10% per time. And you start out at 5 miles, and then you go, 10% more the next Saturday. And so there's all this magic about leading indicators to get you to your lagging result. But the same principle happens in business. If I want to improve 20% in sales, for example, that's my lagging indicator. Everyone has that goal, 30%, whatever. Put your marker down in the power is in the leading indicator. And a leading indicator in that kit, as I go through in my Teachable course, a great one for there might be number of follow-up calls with existing customers, or number of new calls to new customers. We call those cold calls, right? Either one of those could be a very powerful leading indicator. That it's hard to motivate yourself sometimes do a cold call. It's scary, it's lots of rejection, whatever. But as you have that leading indicator up and visible for your sales team, let's say my target was 30, you're going to get a better chance at hitting your lagging if you're doing a great job at those 2 leading indicators. And so what I encourage is visual measurement, whether you're doing the marathon or trying to improve sales in your business. Have that very visually on your board, whether you're a self-entrepreneur or got a team of 10 or 30. Have that on the board, review it weekly with an action plan. Last week I did 25 out of 30. That's better than, I did 22 the week before, so that's great. But what am I going to do to get 30? What am I learning about that? What's my plan for next week? The other one, by the way, that I highlight as a leading indicator for a sales team is, it's often not done as well, is what if you had 30 calls to existing customers? Why do I say that? Well, A, for customer satisfaction, to make sure that they're happy. That goes a long way. But also, those are your already trusted customers. Ask them if there's anything else you can do to help. And often there's a different product or a different sales group or a more expensive service you can provide to them. They already trust you. So, Thomas, those are 2 examples outside of marathon running in the sales where the power is in the leading indicator if you want to drive lagging results.
So the leading indicator is the small step that you take to achieve your goal, essentially.
Yeah, basically. And now another important point that I learned from my friend Bob Maurer, who wrote a great little book that was highlighted on Google of his top 100 books. Just a little book. It's Small Steps, the Kaizen Way. And his basic paradigm, and one more reason to start with small steps, using your word, is he was a medical research internist teacher at a hospital in Western United States. And they were struggling with patients to get them, they would come in with, cholesterol problems, heart problems, overweight problems, stress problems. And he highlights in his book a patient named Cheryl that came in, and the internist, the resident, was working with her, and she just wasn't able. She was a single mom with 2 kids and a working job, just unable to make any change in her life. So finally, one time with Dr. Maurer there, and he'd done a little research on Kaizen, 7 small steps, the power is in small steps. And he said, okay, Carol, do you watch a little bit of TV when the kids go to bed at night? He says, yeah, I do. I use that to unwind. Great. Okay, great. What if, I want you to come back in a week, but what if during one commercial break, you stood up and either ran in place or did jumping jacks for one commercial on your favorite show? Could you do that? Yeah, I can do that. I'll do that. We start tonight. You bet. She comes back a week later, having done that. And then Dr. Maurer says to her, and then the resident says to her, okay, do you think during one 30-minute show at night, you could do jumping jacks or standing in place during every commercial? Yeah, I could do that. I could do that. It was kind of fun. It was kind of, I didn't have to, it's not too much stress, blah, blah, blah. I could still do it. Kids were asleep, So she does it. I said, okay, I want you to come back in 2 weeks. And so, where this story is going. She lost her 20 pounds. She actually started running. And it all started with small steps. Because if it's, if you do the big dreamer, which I also believe in, the Jack Canfield, Tony Robbins approach, big, hairy, audacious goal, it can scare the crap out of your limbic system and you don't want to start, right? So the next step is to find that really small step to start, to run the first mile or the first half mile, or to make the first cold call, or, start with some really small step that gets you engaged. I heard my son-in-law told me one time, who was trying to get into a running practice, and the small step was, and his goal was to run 3 times a week. His small step, and this was beautiful. There's so much brain science behind this one. His small step was, his only commitment was really to go outside with his running shoes and running gear on. And if that's what he did, he accomplished his goal. And so that was his only goal. His real end in mind was to get to run 3 times a week, 20 minutes. But his small step was, and he was busy and he was a little stressed and blah, blah, he's trying to build this life and this career. And so he did that. And 2 out of the first 3 times, all he did was step outside his door with his running shoes on, his gear. And then one time he actually went for the run. He felt relaxed enough and then that's how it started. But he really went it down into such a micro goal that it calmed down the limbic system and allowed him to get started. And hopefully small business, business owners are just, okay, I haven't been able to get my employees to start this new behavior, this new idea around safety or environment or production or cost. How can I break it down into a very small step so that we can start this habit? Does that make sense, Thomas?
Perfect sense. I love the going outside and then going back in again. I would have said, if you're out there, you might as well go for a run.
Yeah, and that's eventually what happened. But just to get his conscious, just to get himself, well, I got outside, but I'm too stressed or I'm too busy or I'm too late because I slept in. And then that one time where he was actually able to do it, and all of a sudden it started a habit.
So your improve your business performance by 20% course, did you say it was?
Yep.
Is that what the content of that, is that what you just referred to?
Yeah, so it's that 7 steps. It's in 10 videos. People can find it on my website at ci4life.org, www.ci4life.org. And on there, you can see a discounted, it's $59.99 for those 10 videos. I had a professional videographer coming in. And basically after each video, there's an action plan as a single entrepreneur or your senior team sitting around. And, for example, the first one is the SWOT, and then the second one is your purpose. And then the third one is what's your goals. And so, and don't start the next video until you've done the workshop idea that I gave you in specific terms, who does what by when. And then the next one is leading indicators, identify some leading indicators. And then the video stops and you do the work. And so by the end of this whole thing, you've got this beautiful business plan and performance plan to improve performance by 20%. And then, as I mentioned, right now I have on there, as they finish the last video, they can have a free coaching call with me to check in on their and review their plan with me. So anyhow, I think it's really a low cost. It won't take you, it'll take you maybe an afternoon to work through the videos, but you'll come up with a very comprehensive plan to improve your business. And the last couple of steps are, I dream about implementation. That's what I did in big companies for years, productivity improvement, implementation, coaching. And the last couple of steps are, okay, you have to have a tracking system. Hopefully it's some visual management up on a board. Doesn't have to be a sophisticated CRM necessarily, a customer relationship manager. And then the last step is what's my business rhythm? What's my cadence to use this? So weekly and monthly, how am I going to review these leading indicators as a sales team, as an ops team, as a safety team, whatever it might be, and what's my commitment around that? And companies that are starting to do that, I just heard, yesterday. A digital billboard company that I worked with yesterday, the owner was saying, yeah, and the sales team is still doing their weekly reviews. They're reviewing their leading KPIs with action plans, just as you articulated, and they're starting to see a demonstrable change in their both behaviors and their business. So yeah, that you can find all that on my website.
And if you did want a one-to-one approach, you do coaching as well, yeah?
Yeah. In fact, on there, and you can see on the bottom of my website, there's some free coaching calls. If you, even before you want to sign up, you want to talk through your business or your personal development plan. So I make it, kind of risk-free. We can do one for free first to kind of get into the conversation and build some trust between each other.
Well, I really appreciate all the information. I found that really beneficial. What are your goals for yourself at the moment?
Oh, good one. So in January 2021, I set 4 goals, and I'm tracking that on my spreadsheet. It's one of the principles. So one of them, probably the most interesting one, is my wife and I went plant-based eating. A doctor friend, the Allreds down the street, had been doing it, and it helped her rheumatitis. They gave me a book, How Not to Die, by a Michael doctor that has showed all these studies on the value of plant-based eating, low sugar, plant-based eating. And so we're now almost 2 months into it, and I love it. And I've missed the sugar, to be honest, but not the meat. And we found these incredible recipes. Like, I'm not just a guy, Thomas, that'll snack on veggies. That to me is like, that's like, but some incredible, if you find the right recipes, the taste. So anyhow, that's a big life change. And we only committed to it for 30 days, but now we're committing to it. Like, I can't see myself moving away from it. Does that mean that at a restaurant with friends and something's not available that I won't? No, absolutely no. But I'll still track it. And so far I'm 99% on plant-based eating. And so that's one of my big ones right now. Another one is to get this message that I have around crushing your goals, both personally and business, out to thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And that's why I'm so energized to do these kind of podcasts. So I really appreciate it, Thomas, to spread the message to the UK and beyond on some of these principles that might be able to help people. So those are 2 big ones for this year, both a personal one and a professional one.
Well, I'm about, I think, probably 5 or 6 years into your first one. So,
oh, very good. So you could tell me a lot more.
Maybe, yeah. If you do want any advice on that one, let me know.
Okay. What would be your biggest lesson on plant-based eating as far as benefits and or how to enjoy it?
I think the how to enjoy it side of things, I think people are already working on that. So I don't think I need to, there's plenty of people who are incentivized to make good food and that sort of thing. I would say keep an eye on your vitamin D. Supplement with that if you don't get enough sun, because I'm certainly stuck inside at the moment.
Okay.
There's a company called, I think it's Nothing Fishy, something like that.
Okay.
And there's omega-3 that you need to make sure that you get, and that you get it from algae, basically. So I'd keep an eye on that. And iron. So iron comes in stuff like lentils. So, people get a lot of their iron from meat. So I wouldn't necessarily say that there's anything to worry about, but it's just you need to make sure that you're getting everything you need. That's all.
Yeah, and these recipes that we've tried, I can't remember the name of the book, or I'd give it a shout out. Man, it is full of lentils and different types of beans. And so, yeah, I'm very mindful, especially with exercise, to get enough protein. And I have it's a short sample size of 2 months, but I've seen no drop off, and I hope to actually see a benefit. I've seen a drop off on weight, but I've seen no drop off on strength and capacity and endurance on my biking and running. So, but yeah, you're right. It can't be just, we still have to get all that protein. And to your point, I never thought about the vitamin D, so I will think about that. yes, I do take an omega-3 for also for mind and Alzheimer and different reasons for omega and B12 and some things. But yeah, no, that's good advice. And I'll look into actually the vitamin D.
Good stuff. And remind me, your second goal was getting it out to thousands of people.
Yeah, just this message of how do I get both the book on purpose and the course on how to improve your profitability out to more and more people. So I've gone on this massive get on podcasts, get on TV, get on different things, and it's been a lot of fun. And I didn't know so I'm learning all the time, and it's very fun to kind of learn and figure out the next steps here.
Well, I think you've given a lot of value, so I'm sure that you've done that in your other episodes as well. So I have no doubt that if you keep going, I'm no doubt that you'll reach your goal. Where's the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, you can find everything we've talked about here on CI for Life. And it's just the number 4 in there, ci4life.org. And you can see the coaching, the book, the course, everything else on there, Thomas. In fact, if your listeners subscribe today, the first 10 or over the next couple of days, the first 10, I've got a free copy, an audible copy of Live Your Purpose. When you author a book, they give you a few free audible links so that people. So if I can get some subscribers from this, just hit the link. When you subscribe, you'll see free audible as one of the choices. You can hit that, and I'll send you a free copy of Live Your Purpose in audible format.
Well, I think I might. If is it on Audible, the book?
Yes.
Okay, I'll get that anyway, because I think it's a good, worthwhile purchase. So I'll do that anyway after this episode. But have you got any closing thoughts?
No, just the idea. I'm very mindful today of mental health and people striving, particularly during COVID and isolation, and as you mentioned, inside, and that there are tools and skills and mindsets that can help us be successful in not to compare yourself versus others, but to compare yourself versus yourself. And that's my whole passion, is how do I get these ideas and skills and tools and mindsets out to people so that they can accomplish their own goals. And you notice it's live your purpose, not Thomas's purpose, not Rick's purpose, not your parents' purpose, but yours. And so I'm very mindful of mental health and all the discouragement and depression and some of the stats out there. So live your purpose. Start today in working on very small steps to improve your life. And you'll see such confidence and value, even if you don't see it right away, after a couple of weeks that you will see it. And so start small, start with some of these little things we talked about. The whole book that I've mentioned here is meant to teach the hows. And I'm always impressed with books that'll inspire me on what to do, but I'm even more impressed with a book that teaches me how and can put in my mind how to develop that new skill or that new idea. And so that's my passion. And so that I hope people will not get discouraged with comparisons to others or isolation or some of the things that are going on right now, but to start with defining their best self, and let's move in small steps from there.
Well, thank you very much for all the amazing information and for being a great guest. And I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Thomas. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rick.